talking basketball. They're fucking dumb as shit. They don't know basketball, but they will make dumb ass jokes.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pod Don't Lie with Sam and Stav. We are here with we've been teasing it for weeks here. We got our draft edition. And this time we actually have somebody on the pod that knows what the fuck he's talking about. Welcome, John Wasserman, to the show. Thanks for being here, John. We really appreciate it, man.
Of course. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. I was reading some of your stuff. John's a draft expert over there at Bleacher. A lot of great stuff. And, he dedicated his career to this. Me and Sam have we Googled for about 45 minutes beforehand. So it's going to be a battle of the minds here as we discuss all these prospects.
We've been talking about this, and is this, as we were talking a minute before the pod started, Jonathan? Is this an exciting draft because it's such a toss up, or is it just almost just like who cares? Because
we've been like talking about these guys for so long that like my curiosity level is high. At this point, I'm like, I can't wait to find out who goes where because we've been talking about it forever. Right. However, if we're talking about, past couple drafts, like it's just a lot less interesting in terms of the names that we're talking about. And right. And so we've also been going on for so long, like there's only so many times you could watch the same tape over and over. And your mind starts to play tricks. Like I'm changing my board. Like yesterday, like I've watched these guys for like 5 years already. And
right.
And my opinion is changing now, and it probably shouldn't, but that's just like what happens after so long.
Yeah, it's got some guys like James Wiseman has probably not played a competitive game of basketball in so long.
LaMelo hasn't played in literally 1 year, right?
Wow, that's true.
Australia stopped in November last year. The motherfucker hasn't played in a year. It's crazy.
Yeah, and Wiseman played 3 games at Memphis, and 2 of them were against teams who I think like the tallest guy was 6'6". So it's like hard to even judge. Right?
Chamberlain stats.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
and
yeah.
He might as well has not even suited up at all. And then go back to LaMelo. He played 12 games in Australia a year ago. And, who knows what he's been doing since,
But he's got Flavor Flav as a hype man of a father. So, I'm excited. If LaMelo somehow dropped to the Knicks, I just want
we go, baby.
I just want energy and excitement in the garden, man. That's all I want.
It's funny you say that because I had a scout text me the other day and he's like, LaMelo could fall, but I think his floor is number 7.
Oh, brutal. Fuck the Pistons. No, we want him.
It's just like that, Steph Curry went right before the Knicks.
Yeah.
He should pull an Eli Manning and be like, I'm not playing. And well, for him, San Diego, but he should pull that with the Pistons, man. Would you rather be in the Garden or the whatever, or the Brawl in the Palace? Where would you rather be? You don't have the frame to fight like a fucking Artest or Ben Wallace. Come on.
So you're projecting another historic melee in the stands in Detroit. That's your big reasoning for him.
When no fans are at the game. Look, I'm spinning a narrative, dude.
I love the idea, Sam, that he has so much juice as the number 7 pick that he's going to be like, I'm not playing. They're like, all right, fuck it. We'll pick another guy. Who cares?
Seven would hurt because you just said Steph Curry. It's Steph all over again.
Right.
Well, I think, that's a good point, John. I think if he doesn't get drafted by the Knicks, he's going to be incredible. And if he does, he's going to be horrible. It's Schrodinger's all-star. If the Knicks draft him, he'll suck. And if he goes 7 before us, he'll give us another thing to talk about, for the rest of, another bullet in the chamber of sorrow. But anyway, man, that's this. It is. I know I'm having a hard time with this one too because it doesn't really look like. I don't know. I don't really know shit. You've been, like you said, you've been looking at these guys for 5 years since they were preps or whatever. But I don't know. The question I keep coming back to is, in a different draft, right? Like, let's say last year's draft, how high would the number one? Who's number 1 on your board? Like, not like LaMelo. Okay, cool.
Why do you have him 1?
Oof. For a couple of reasons, and a bunch of them have to do with the rest of the field. And just like there's nobody else that's exciting. And so my case for LaMelo talks about his ceiling and his floor. Like passing translates. Right, I think he's got like Trae Young's passing, and he's 6'7". He doesn't have Trae Young's shot making and scoring, but he's an unbelievable passer. And at 6'7", with his ball handling skills, his vision, his IQ, I mean, that he's going to be a high assist guy no matter what. And so I think the fact that we can bank on that translating suggests he's got a high floor. And then the ceiling kicks in if suddenly his shot becomes a little more consistent. I mean, that's really the big swing skill that is going to determine whether or not he's going to be an NBA superstar or just like a, good stats guy. Right. And he's really young. I mean, 19, his body has changed a lot over the past couple of years.
Right.
He's matured a lot. Even if he's not exactly a charmer in an interview, but
right.
But he's matured a lot from, if you even just look at pictures and interviews from him from a couple of years ago, he looks now like he's actually closer to being like a man than some little kid. And so we'll see where he keeps. I think like being a celebrity early was a good thing for him. Like he liked the cameras in the beginning, and now at this point, like he tried to avoid the cameras in Australia. Like he was sick of the attention, and I think that's a good thing for him now. And he's kind of seen his family fuck up in the past with bad press and all that stuff. And I think he's kind of learned a little bit. Like I got to stay a little more under the radar, and I think that's going to help him.
Well, if he wants to stay under the radar, New York is the place to be. Our media is very kind to young athletes, and is there any world where he's not better than Lonzo?
He's going to be better than Lonzo. I don't see.
Nice.
He's such a better. So, like both of them have that amazing passing, but Lonzo's. I mean, LaMelo is like a lot shiftier, a lot tougher to contain in the half court and in transition. He's a better athlete, I think. And then again, he's a little more creative as a scorer. Like the big question with Lonzo coming out of UCLA was like, can he score? Can he put the ball in the basket? Can he beat anyone off the dribble? Can he finish around the hoop? And can that weird shot translate? And I think with LaMelo, there's just fewer questions about can he beat guys off the dribble? Can he create his own shot? And he gets a lot of shit for his shooting percentages overseas, but he still made like 2 threes a game. Like he can make shots. It's just a matter of over the years, can he like cut down on the bad misses and just get a little more consistent.
And he's playing against men too. I mean, these are adults, and his. You're right. The clips I've seen, I'm like, he is a superstar type. Like he does have that ability,
And he's Oh, go ahead. Sorry, John.
No, I mean, like there's obviously enough, reasons to be a little bit skeptical of him, and the percentages overseas, like 37% from the field and 25% from downtown.
Yeah.
It's also, it was 12 games. He moved to a new continent, 12 games with playing against guys who are in their 30s, and he still averaged like 17, 7, and 7. And a couple steals. And so, I don't know, my personal perspective, I don't put too much stock into percentages through 12 games of an 18-year-old. And so I'm buying the made shots over the misses and the flashy passes over the turnovers and stuff like that, given the sample size and the competition and the lifestyle change and all that.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, like you said, he's 18, he's going to a new continent. And it's like, sometimes I think about LaMelo, like how, I don't know, I think with him and also RJ Hampton, it's almost like, we were saying like, oh, this is when that first happened and they were going to play professionally. It's like, oh, this is good. They're going to go make their money, whatever. And they'll show that they can play against men. But I think both those guys I think if LaMelo played college ball, he would have been a lot better than the guys his age. And it would have probably legitimized him to the point where maybe he's just the number one pick and we're not talking about anything here, because he does seem really good to me. He does, have the pedigree. He's been playing, the whole, he was playing like in Latvia when he was like 14 against like grown men. And I don't know. I think I think they probably, when it's all said and done, sort of LaMelo especially, and I don't know, we can talk about RJ Hampton later, but it seems to me like he did himself a disservice, because especially in a draft like this, if he just has a couple highlights where he's, dunking on Duke or something, like I think it's a lot different than when he's dunking on like Matthew Dellavedova's bald cousin. You know what I mean? It's like no one gives a shit, but it's like if he's doing it against somebody, then like I think especially in this draft, probably we're not even talking about anything, because I just don't see it as that strong. And I guess the question I was winding up towards, now that we've talked about LaMelo, is like, so he's number one on your board. Where would he go in last year's draft or in a typical draft, let's say? Is he, because to me, I look at these guys and I'm like, these guys seem like the number 5 pick in a regular draft or something like that. Like they seem like mid-lottery guys, not number 1. And that's how I view it. And again, I don't know. What's your perspective?
Yeah, like if I went back, I mean, I didn't know Tyler Hero was going to be Tyler Hero, right?
Of course.
If I were to do like a
What
board,
what you knew then, right? Like what you knew then
correct.
with what you know now.
All right, so Zion and Ja are obviously going 1-2 again. I think at this point, I liked RJ Barrett. I mean, I wasn't like super in love with him. There was a lot of question marks. He was like a soft. I had him at 3 just where he went, but he was like
Right.
a soft number 3. Like my level of
Right.
confidence in him being a star.
We're
was-
familiar with soft threes around here. I don't know. Sorry, Sam. Sam might be a soft 4.5. I don't mean to sell you short.
I still have hopes for RJ.
No,
I really
stop.
think
Before we get into you who were wanting about RJ, this is what happens on this show, John. It's like as soon as RJ is mentioned, Sam it's like the Terminator where you like it's like beep 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 must defend Knicks. So RJ's a soft 3. Where would you put LaMelo? Where would you put LaMelo in that draft? Do you think he goes 3?
Yeah, I mean for me, but I mean like I've talked to guys who have LaMelo, 6 or 7 in this draft. And so that's just
Right,
kind of
true.
It's because of his shooting and defense.
shooting defense, and there are guys who just don't like the ball name, and they just like they just don't
Right.
like
The circus, everything
family.
around it.
Yeah, and they're just he still has that reputation of being immature and not being professional, and even though I think that's a little bit unfair because I think from where he's come from to where he is now, like he's improved in that area.
Yeah.
But there are some guys who just and honestly, it's a lot of the older scouts I talk to who are just not fans. Just not fans.
Right.
Some of the younger scouts I talk to are like, "Oh yeah, he's good." I don't care about that shit. But the older ones to me are always the ones who kind of question like, can LaMelo be like a good NBA pro?
But don't you think there's no chance that the Wolves take him at 1 because they just gave up Wiggins for D'Angelo Russell? I mean, they've got a point guard unless you want to play LaMelo with D'Angelo, but defensively they're already kind of a nightmare.
Oh,
it seems like they're going to take Anthony Edwards.
So when I first did the lottery played out, Minnesota wins the lottery, and I had to do a mock draft like 10 minutes later, like get it out.
Right.
So I didn't talk to anybody. Like my first reaction was, okay, Anthony Edwards makes the most sense on paper. They just got Russell. Edwards is like the big explosive scoring wing. So on paper, he fits the best. And then I start asking around the league, and most people are like, they're probably going to take LaMelo. And so I quickly kind of changed back. And so, I at this point, I don't know what they're going to do. I did an article the other week about like everyone saying now James Wiseman could go number 1. And that's the name everyone keeps hearing for Minnesota, even though that makes no sense either.
That's got to be. I'm sorry to cut you off. That's got to be Minnesota trying to get the Hornets to trade, right? Like that's like no. Again, that's the thing with Wiseman too. The Warriors too. It's like I guess if they had to pick somebody, it'd be Wiseman, but don't they want to trade the pick? Like, don't they really want to win now? I don't know. All that Wiseman stuff to me seems like that scene in Billy Madison where he's trying to trade his banana for a snack pack. You know what I mean? It's like, and what I'm afraid is that the Knicks are the team that's going to trade the banana for the snack pack.
Don't say that. Stop it. We've been burned too many. I have nightmares about Jordan Hill after Steph Curry. I've had Michael Sweetney, all these draft picks where I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, I from my limited knowledge about this, I don't see how the Wolves don't take Edwards just in terms of fit. But then I hear knocks on Edwards, like defensively, he's got the tools, but he might not be much, similar to Wiggins.
Wiggins 2.0, baby.
I think mentally Edwards is worse than LaMelo.
Really?
Edwards is, and I've been pretty critical of him, and sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, I look at him and like I forget that he's 19 because
he's a kid,
he looks like he's like 35.
Right.
But I mean, he really is like totally about building his own brand, and not like LaMelo isn't, but he really sometimes looks like he doesn't give a shit. And sometimes his self-awareness is so bad. Like listening to talk about his defense and how that's going to separate him. Like he stunk on defense this year, and he still claims like how good of a defender he is. Like sometimes he just doesn't see it. And sometimes there are possessions where he's dribbling the ball for 25 seconds and then launches a pull-up 3. And it's just like everyone's standing around. You clearly shouldn't be doing this. And he's one of those guys who loves himself and just follows Instagram. Like he's always talking about going number 1, and he's retweeting people, who are giving him praise. And I just think his self-awareness is so low, and his feel for the game is so bad. He reminds me of Zach LaVine, is kind of who I project him to be as a guy who's going to get buckets, but his team's going to suck, and the offense is going to look really bad if it's running through him.
Interesting.
That's interesting too.
Although
Yeah, because
Levine has looked pretty good this year. I know the team was not great, but he has made strides. His jumper's way better than I ever expected. But yeah, it's a fair comparison.
He's good. He's gonna be a productive pro, Edwards. I just think if the offense is running through Anthony Edwards, you're in trouble.
well, it won't I guess with the Wolves. That's the one thing where it's like, but then the questions of maturity that you talk about come into play, where it's like he just went number one, and yeah, he's a clutch guy. Like that clutch workout. I saw some of those interviews were brutal. Like you're saying, his self-awareness was not that great. And yeah, I think that is a potential issue right there where it's like he won't be. I mean, he'll be the number 3 option on that team, and he should be.
But that team already has maturity questions. And after Jimmy going to the finals, leaving those guys and seeming to not be the problem, all eyes on D'Angelo, all eyes on Cat. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So
D'Angelo had an awful winning season with the Warriors. He's a very good player. He was great with the Nets. He raised his stock, and I feel like his stock is a little back down. But
Yeah.
the West is stacked next year. Do you see the Wolves making the playoffs?
hell no.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
And then there's the other question with Edwards, and maybe we're overthinking here, and sometimes I tend to do that with 10 months to think about these guys.
Right.
But like, so Edwards playing him off the ball, like, so if he goes to Minnesota, and kind of before I said the offense is running through Edwards, you're in trouble. Okay, so then you put him on a team where he's like a number 3 option. But one of Edwards' biggest weaknesses is playing off the ball. He's not a good spot.
Right.
He's not a good spot up shooter when the offense isn't running through him. And I've been to his high school games where they'll play zone or they'll do something to kind of take him out of the offense. He just stands around. He doesn't really pick his spots well when it gets to him. It'll be like 5 possessions in a row where he didn't get a look, so then he'll force something. So he just doesn't have a good feel playing off the ball. So I question, like, is that a good role for him? Or does he need the touches early on to kind of go through the trial and error of being a number 1 guy?
Right,
Figure
right.
out, okay, what's a good shot versus a bad shot? So I can't really picture a good fit for him. I like Atlanta. I think in Atlanta there would be a good mix of playing alongside Trey and still being like a number 2 guy, but Trey is still going to dominate the ball. I mean, that type of role. I worry in Minnesota between Russell, between Towns, he's going to be doing too much standing around.
So you think they'll take LaMelo 1, the Wolves?
Honestly, I don't have anyone in Minnesota's front office telling me what they're going to do. I'm just other rival teams have suggested LaMelo. This past week, I've heard from teams like supposedly a couple guys in Golden State who think that the Wolves are going to take Wiseman first. Again, I think that's also part of smoke. I'm also hearing Charlotte wants to trade up, and so that obviously motivates the Wolves to say they're going to take Wiseman so they can get a better offer from Charlotte. But at this point, I mean, I think everyone's shrugging their shoulders in terms of what Minnesota's going to do.
How about the Israeli kid who seems to have a rising stock? Would he fit well on Minnesota?
Yeah, and so that's kind of, if you're Minnesota, he's an obvious target. He kind of fits exactly what they need. A combo forward, totally, 5-tool versatile guy, and somebody who has experience playing on and off the ball, unselfish. But number 1, that's a reach. I mean, if he doesn't turn out to be a star, which I don't think he's going to be, the front office is going to get cooked for reaching.
What do you think he's like? Do you think he's like a lower ceiling Turkoglu, or where do you see him?
Yeah, I mean, like, so the way I kind of compare him to in terms of ceiling is like Gallinari. Like Gallinari is like a good player. He's not an all-star. He's not going to win. He's not going to carry your team to the playoffs. But he's a good player. He's a fringe all-star some years. I think Denny Dia could be like a fringe.
You don't
all-star.
need to sell me on Gallo, dude. I used to Rooster man, that jersey rip. I fucking love that dude.
Yeah, no, I'm a fan too. I'd say like if they're totally optimistic, best case, Gordon Hayward type.
Got it.
Yeah, but his shooting's a problem, right? Isn't that the thing with him? Like everything but his shooting is pretty good with Avdia.
So he's like okay from downtown, but the weird thing is his free throw numbers, and everybody will tell you free throw numbers are more indicative of your shooting than 3-point percentages. And so for whatever reason, he's an anomaly. He shoots fine from downtown. The eye test look like if you were to look at him take a 3-pointer, you'd be like, okay, this kid's a shooter. If you were to watch him once, but then you look at his free throw percentage, and I think for the past 3 years, he's under 60% from the free throw line, which is just bizarre. And you wonder if it's just mental because he can shoot. He's also like his reputation. He's like a really hard worker, like spends 20 hours a day in the gym and constantly talking about getting better and has a good head on his shoulders, competitive. And so I think he's a guy you want to bet on getting better with his shot. And just given where he is from downtown right now, 18, 19 years old, I mean, he was making threes at a good enough clip given the competition he faced in the early league and given his age.
Interesting. Cool.
Where's he on your board?
5 or 6.
Got it.
He would make
he's
sense with
one-
the Bulls too, right? Though I mean, that's another fit. I mean, it's funny that Otto Porter has that giant fucking contract and he hasn't played at all, but he's essentially be what they were hoping. The goal is he would grow into the role they traded for Otto Porter 3 whatever it was years ago. But he would seem to make sense since he's not really Porter's not really playing. I mean, so he could go 4, and I think probably he makes sense for the Cavs. I mean, yeah, it seems like he might go. If I were the Bulls, Cavs, or Hawks, I mean,
Cavs
he
ain't
seems
taking a
like.
guard.
And so that's why
Yeah.
I think it's going to be tough for trades to happen at the top of the draft because teams in the 4 through 6 range could use a guy like. There's no reason to trade up because Denny fits them so well, and so does Isaac Okoro and some of these other versatile forwards. And again, there's just not as much of these teams at the top want to trade down. I think the teams in the 4 to 6 range or 4 to 9 range, like their level of confidence in LaMelo Ball is just not as high as it would be for a typical number 1 overall projected guy.
Right. Interesting. So is there any kind of trade you see, or do you think it's just going to be like LaMelo, Wiseman, and then the Hornets? That leaves the Hornets to, I guess either if they. It's weird because people say they really want a big, right? Like they want if they're not going to get Wiseman, they might get the USC guy, Okongwu or whatever. But to me, that doesn't make sense. The Hornets fucking stink. They should take who. I mean, if Edwards is the best player available, that never made sense to me. Where it's like they're so keyed in on a big that they would pass on whoever of the top 3, isn't whether it's Melo or whether it's Edwards. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
First of all, I think that I think it's kind of bullshit that they're saying that they're going after a center. I mean, I think you're right. They're going to take the best player available, regardless of what position he plays. And I could see from the guys I spoke to that they would really love to get James Wiseman. However, I think they could think James Wiseman is the best player available. He just happens to be a center, so it makes it a little bit easier to pick him. But I don't think like if they like Obi Toppin or if they like Tyrese Halliburton more than Okongwu, they're going to take Halliburton.
What's your word on Toppin?
Everybody likes Toppin. Like everybody likes Toppin.
Does he kind of remind you of Kmart a little bit? He's got that explosiveness. He's kind of got a weird looking jumper,
Yeah, no, that's not bad. Yeah, I mean, listen, the problem with and if you look at history, he's 22 years old, and the track record of 22-year-olds going in the lottery is really, really bad. In fact, I think I looked the other day. Actually, I think Kenyon Martin was the last 22-year-old to go number 1 and make an All-Star team. That was 20 years.
Wow.
And he won Rookie of the Year.
Yeah,
He was the bane of my existence on the New Jersey Nets. I was just watching Jason Kidd highlights the other day. He looked like a fucking deer the way he would run through the court, just jump up and
dude.
tomahawk. He dunked angry.
Yeah. No, Toppin is. He's a crazy athlete. Led the nation in dunks, and then when you lead the nation in dunks and shoot 39% from downtown, that checks the boxes that NBA guys are looking for and big men. However, he's not a good defender, and so that raises another question of like, do you want to? He's going to be productive. He's going to get a lot of money. Do you want to pay? It reminds me of John Collins from the Hawks, right? Collins is like averages like 20 and 8, shoots like 60% from the field, but isn't a good defender, and maybe that has to do with why the Hawks aren't that good, despite they having productive players. And so someone's going to have to pay Collins a lot of money for his numbers, and you'd probably in a couple of years have to pay Toppin a lot of money, but that means you're committing to a big guy who isn't a very good rim protector.
And they have Capella already as well as Collins, so that's 2 big men that you might have to pay pretty well.
Oh yeah, and the future Collins to me seems like, I think you're right. It doesn't. He's a good player, but it just doesn't. Especially if you're going to build a team around Trae Young. I mean, that can't be your big guy. I mean, he seems like he's going to get traded at some point. But that what you're talking about with Toppin and just with big guys in general, that's something that has also confused me about this draft because to me, I know we just saw, in the finals, it's Anthony Davis and you have to go through Jokic and, whatever. But it really feels like to me, I'm like, there's a lot of big guys at the top of the draft that keep getting talked about. And to me, it's like, why is anybody doing that when it seems like their value? I mean, even just on a pure monetary basis, it's like the rookie scale contracts are like $9 million or, 8 to 10 million a year or whatever. And you could get just in this year's free agency, it's like you could probably get really good, productive guys that are ready to play right now at the MLE. You know, you pay him $5 million, you get Tristan Thompson, maybe, you know, Millsap, Whiteside. So I don't understand, even with Wiseman, who I get he's got the physical tools and all this stuff, but it's like best case scenario, that type of player, I don't know. Do you want to, the same way we just talked about offensive big men, but just big men in general, unless they're basically three. I mean, at this point, even big men have to be 3-and-D guys. It feels like they have to have Porzingis' skill set to really, you know, or be so good at defense that you're Rudy Gobert. And it, you know, I don't know why do we see this like Wiseman? We've got Okongwu. There's even Toppin, who's, I don't know. It just seems old fashioned to me. Why aren't more like three wings? You know, everyone's looking for a fucking wing. Everybody is trading everything for a wing, and it seems like those guys are kind of later in the lottery, from what I could tell, or later even in the first round.
Yes, and the point you just made is a point that I've kind of pounded throughout the year on why the Warriors shouldn't take James Wiseman. Like they can get Willie Cauley-Stein to do the exact same thing,
right?
Offense that's running through all these guards and wings. Like they're not going to be feeding the ball to James Wiseman, and he's going to be creating shots for them.
Right.
So I mean, personally, I have Wiseman at like number 9 on my board. I'm not.
Wow. So you think the Knicks would pass on Wiseman as well? Because I think it's a fair question.
The Knicks beat reporter
Stav hates my Knicks bias. You got to forgive me.
It's not that I hate your bias. It's like you asking John, like, so do you think Stav would pass on having sex with Rihanna? It's like it will just never happen. I'm never. He's not going to 9, bro. I don't know what
he's a draft expert, and he said he has.
It's his 9. Board, but he's not going now, right? I'm not wrong here. There's no way he's at 8. No, there's no chance.
He's gonna go.
Yeah.
But you have him on your 9. Okay. But you think he's like, who's like a good comp for Wiseman? From what I know, you haven't seen a huge sample size, but like. He is. I've heard Chris Bosh, maybe because he's a lefty and a skilled big. But like, what have you been hearing about him?
I mean, personally, I just don't see the skill part. Like, I see like everyone has like amazing highlight tapes, right? And like James Wiseman is a great highlight tape, but go look at his lowlights; they're scary.
Right.
And he's not like, yeah, he can make a fallaway jumper, but like in an empty gym or against guys who are 6'3", like he's not. This is not something he can do every game, and just. I think he's like a Whiteside type of guy to me. I mean, he's a dunker, he's a finisher, a block shots, but I don't picture him, you know, hitting fallaways in the middle of a game or shooting threes like anytime soon. And maybe he evolves and you know, 4 years from now, he develops a 3-ball and he becomes a guy you can feature in the post. But right now, he's a pick and roll, dive to the basket, you know, offensive rebounder who'll block shots type of guy. And so to me in today's NBA, if you can't shoot, you can't switch out in the perimeter and defend, which he does not project to do at a good level, and he can't pass.
Right.
And I think these are like key things that you need from your big guy, like you're talking about, Stav. So to me, I have a hard time understanding why he's going to go top 3. Teams seem to disagree with me.
Right.
And I think they're willing to just look at this kid who's 7'1", 240, 7'6" wingspan, quick jumper, gets up high above the rim, and they're willing to bet on those mixtape flashes of fall away jumpers and 3-point shots and grab and go transition ball handling stuff, and just betting on that actually becoming part of his regular arsenal.
Dude, with Instagram, it feels like it's like online dating now, where you just see them at their best, and then you show up and you're like, wait, that's not you, you know? So,
yeah, absolutely.
How about Okongwu? Is he gonna be he's another big that's on the board that you mentioned? I mean, what do you think about him?
He's top 3 for me. So Okongwu, I mean, I kind of, so the difference between the two, I'm buying Okongwu's skill level. Like he's really sharp with his footwork, his left hand. He's a good passer. He can face you out from the elbows. He shot, like if you want to get deeper into the stats, 15 to 35 on mid-range jumpers, 72% from their free throw line. And not only does he block shots at a high level, he's quick around the perimeter. I mean, he's exactly what you want in big defensively in terms of a guy who could, you know, switch and pick and roll coverage. And if he's isolated in space against like a 2 guard, on the perimeter, I think he can move his feet well enough to keep him in front of him. And I'd seen him live in high school. You know, he played at Chino Hills where LaMelo went. Good boy, his boys with LaMelo. And I watched him against Zion Williamson go for 35 and 14 and 6 blocks. Wow. And it was like pretty eye opening. And he did it really without the skill. And then this year at USC, he was. I mean, the skill really came to life, and not just once in a while. Like every game, he flashed a new move. And he's just somebody I think you can run offense through. You can give it to him, and he can create a high percentage shot, or he can find the corner shooters from the post. And so I'm buying his offensive game a little bit more and his defensive versatility.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that sounds good because it sounds like his like, best case scenario sounds like Bam. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's who you want. That's who you want to be. Whereas Wiseman, it's like, I don't know. What's his best case scenario? Basically, like, I don't know, Dwight Howard, like prime Dwight. I don't know. It's like defender who like can really, and maybe a little more skilled on offense.
Dwight's a once in a generation big man defender though. Dwight, remember what, 2 or 3 time defensive player of the year?
No, I know, dude, but also it's not the same. Like right now, if Dwight Howard comes in, he's just not as valuable. I know it's like,
Rudy Gobert, he's not as valuable, but Rudy Gobert is not the defensive presence that Dwight was for years. I don't think,
I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair to Rudy.
Well, just in terms of Dwight's physique, I'm saying he was just so fucking big. I mean, Rudy is a great defender. Don't get me wrong.
Rudy's wingspan's he covers more ground than Dwight.
7'2", right? So he's a little bigger. But I just think Dwight's body, his rebounding ability is pretty insane too. No disrespect to Rudy.
Yeah, I just think I just think in today's game, even that best case, like you should be swinging for a Bam type big man, not. Even Rudy Gobert, like how far is that? I mean, the Jazz might have to trade him instead of pay him. You know what I'm saying? Like, whereas the Miami Heat are maxing Bam the fuck out. There's no question they're going to pay him as much as it takes. Whereas the Jazz might have to trade him. That's basically my point. It's just the way the game is being played now. He's just not as valuable a big man at his ceiling. That's my only point. I'm not saying he's not going to be good.
The way if Dwight was on that Magic team that made the finals now, that's a dangerous team still because of the way that was a futuristic team. We've talked about that. You get Turkoglu, Charles Lewis. That's the only way a guy like that works. But as we've said, then you've got to build exactly around. It's not a versatile offense. You kind of know what they're going to do. Yeah.
And that's interesting too, because that's like, if you could put Wiseman in a time machine 5 years, then the Warriors really do make sense. If you go shooters, that shooters and Dwight offense, that's exactly what the Warriors could potentially be. But anyway, we're going down a couple of different rabbit holes.
That was a good time to be a big man, dude. Timothy Mozgov got paid. Everyone was popping champagne. A good time to be a 7'2" mediocre big.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. All right, look, let's get to what we really want to talk about, Sam. Come on. Now it's time.
I've been biting my tongue.
I gotta say, you've been good. It's been a half hour into the pod, and we haven't even talked about who the Knicks are gonna draft.
Some would call it a Knicks bias. Other would call it delusions of grandeur. Whatever you want to call it. Look, who do you think falls to us realistically? I think personally that we need to go for either a great wing or a point guard. I don't think a big man makes a lot of sense with Mitchell and RJ. I think you want either a forward who's versatile or a point guard who can. When's the last time the Knicks had an interesting point guard? It was kind of Marbury, right? And that did not last long.
Right. So, yeah.
And who do you think realistically falls for us? The mock I'm looking at is Halliburton at point guard.
I think if Halliburton fell, they would take him without thinking twice.
Is he legit?
Is he legit? I think in this draft, he's legit. I think if we're talking about floors, and I think in this draft, a lot of teams are valuing floor and safety and just like trying to not get a total miss. And there's so much uncertainty in this draft. There's a lot of certainty with Halliburton. His passing, first of all, he reminds me of Alonzo Ball. I think they're so similar in terms of guys who are just not great athletes, but they're high IQ passers who they'll pretty much sit there the whole game. They're not selfish in terms of having to get their own shot. They'll sit there the whole game and just worry about getting guys open looks. And brilliant kid, really high character kid, wins over everybody in an interview. Also has a weird release on a shot, but shot 40% from downtown. And I think a big selling point to Halliburton for a rebuilding team. So he ranked in Synergy Sports the 99th percentile as a spot-up player. So you could play him at point guard, which is his natural position as a passer, but you could also play him at the 2, and I think that gives you flexibility when you're trying to build. So the Knicks could draft Halliburton and then still go out and sign Fred VanVleet because they could play together.
Right.
But is that a problem though? Having a guy with kind of a funky shot, RJ's shot isn't quite there yet. I know the Knicks aren't really competing for anything other than like an 8 seed at this point with their youth. But
back-to-back years, Halliburton's spot-up jumper has been accurate, 40% from 3 both years. His pull-up game is awkward, and I'm not even sure it's going to translate. And so I don't even buy Halliburton ever being a big scorer. In fact, I'd be shocked if he averaged more than 15 points a game once in his career. I think
Wow.
his value is efficiency, making guys around him better, spacing the floor with his catch and shoot ball, and he's a smart defender. But it's
Derek
tough.
Harper back in the fucking garden. Let's do this, dude.
It's exactly a guy like Harper, like a
I love
quality.
Harper.
Me too. One of my favorite Knicks of all time. Like a quality starting, reliable point guard who will never make an all-star team, never put up big fancy stats, but somebody you can rely on every single night to make good decisions, knock down open shots, move the ball, and so I think that's really the selling point to Halliburton.
So who
Sounds
else
awesome.
Who else could?
That
fall to the
sounds
Knicks?
great.
I'm into it.
I'm rooting for Halliburton's the one. I hope he goes. That sounds exactly like what we just some guy to be just a good steadying point guard. That's
Do you think
it,
he'll
baby.
be better than Elfrid Payton?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, dude,
I know
crazy
it's a
question.
fair question. It just speaks to how pathetic being a Knicks fan is. That's a real question you have to ask.
Yeah, the bar is low. The bar is low if we're talking about.
Dude, you should
I
have seen
agree.
Chris Duhon would have a couple good games at point. I'm like, I think we figured it out. I mean,
It's time for the Duhanaissance. Let's get him back.
oh, dude, you better believe I had on my Knicks association mode with Duhon. I was raising those stats. I'm like, well, he'll be this good in a couple years anyway.
I think he had like a 22 assist game under D'Antoni, if I remember right.
I remember, dude. You better believe I was like, this dude's got it.
I remember Duhon. He was good in college too. Duhon's a solid player. Whatever.
He was solid, but I'm just saying the Knicks have
Yeah.
never had. The last time we had a top even like 15 point guard was Marbury, and Marbury in his prime was money, but his prime with us did not last long.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember the fucking Nets sweeping our asses because they just they had a way better team, and then the team they built around Marbury was shit, and also coming to New York was not a good idea for his career.
No, that was not. The values of that organization at the time were not exactly stellar.
Who else?
That
Who
was
else?
Isaiah was around, dude. Isaiah was running the
dude,
show,
I
and you
mean,
had Marbury.
It
Yeah,
was-
brutal
it was
time.
rough.
So
Is
I
there
think-
anyone else you could see falling to the Knicks that interests you?
So I think Isaac. If I'm guessing, Isaac Okoro is the guy they end up with.
Interesting.
Not a point guard, but another guy who I think number 8. You have to show some type of, self-awareness here and realize you're not getting a star, right? So you have to change your mindset and say, okay, I want a tough-minded role player, which the Knicks should probably value a little bit more, I think, given
For sure.
their last 15 years. And so, Okoro is like 6'6". His legs are trees. He's totally intense and energetic and tough and wants to guard your best player and will guard big and
I
guard
love this.
small. Shot 60% inside the arc, doesn't take any bad shots. He's just not a very good shooter, which is obviously problematic when you're building with RJ and Mitch. So I think that's really the big question. On the other hand, if you're the Knicks, like, do you care about fit? You just need the best player available, of course. And so
Right.
that the other question is, we're talking about point guard. So Killian Hayes, who played in Germany this past year, I have him top 3 on my board. And so part of me says, okay, in a vacuum, top 3, 6'5", awesome passer, was totally efficient inside the arc as a finisher, pull-up shooter. His three-point percentage wasn't great, but he shot almost 90% from the free throw line in back-to-back years, has a lot of touch. And then you question again, adding a poor three-point shooter to go with Mitch and RJ, does that make sense? You have 3 cornerstones, and none of them are good shooters. Back to the other hand, he's the best player, I think, available if he does fall to number 8, which he could. I think he's going to get looks at number 7 from Detroit. I know Atlanta's going to look at him at 6. I don't think he falls past Sacramento from what I'm told, but that's kind of the range where he's getting looks at. And if the Knicks are leaning towards and really hoping to get a point guard in this draft, I think Killian Hayes is probably the guy, or Kyra Lewis from Alabama. It just worked out. He's another exciting playmaker.
Yeah, Killian Hayes is also. I mean, I actually kind of feel good about the Knicks in terms of. I think. I mean, with that, before looking at it, this draft felt like it was going to kind of be okay at this range, where it's like there's an opportunity to hit a couple singles. Don't swing for the fences. Even though Hayes kind of is that. It kind of is like you are sort of getting to swing for the fences because a lot of people seem to really like him a lot, and Kyra Lewis the same thing. Although he seems more of a scorer, right? Like he's kind of just like a speedster, maybe get a score first point guard. But yeah, I think the Knicks are kind of in a good position. That's interesting about Okoro. I don't know. I guess I thought he just. I guess I'm so point guard focused for the Knicks that it just didn't. I hadn't even thought about him, and I also feel like he would probably. He's the type of player that would make sense for the Hawks too, wouldn't he? Like, I mean, like they have no fucking what you're talking about. The guy who's gonna like, I mean, maybe they're committed because they've been drafting wings, but I think they need to figure that position out. I don't necessarily think the guys they have on the roster solve it either, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of repetition with DeAndre Hunter, who they just traded up for at
Right.
number 4 in the last year's draft. But yeah, the Hawks need. I mean, I think they ranked 25th or worse in offensive and defensive efficiency. So I don't think they're gonna be too picky. But yeah, they could use
right.
They could use another tough defender, but clearly
Cavs too, for that matter. Now that I think about it, but who knows?
So I was just talking to somebody today or yesterday, I should say, and the Cavs are looking at Obi, Denny Avdia, and Okoro. So
Yeah.
Okoro could go 5. I mean, and if Okoro goes 5, then I think Killian Hayes suddenly becomes a favorite for the Knicks at 8.
Nice. All right,
I mean,
I'm
that's
feeling good. I'm
possible.
feeling
You know,
good about where the Knicks are
A lot of
picking.
these teams, the only problem is the only team that for sure, I mean, a lot of these teams aren't looking at a point guard, I don't think, ahead of us because it's such a point guard rich league. The Pistons will, unfortunately, but the Cavs are definitely not. The Bulls might, but they got Kobe White, who's looks pretty good. And the Hornets have a couple point guards in Rozier and a combo in Graham. And obviously we know the Warriors and the Wolves have. So I mean,
No, yeah. Hopefully it's a run on big guys. Honestly, hopefully it's
Yeah.
like a Kongwu, Toppin. I mean, Toppin is really good, but I mean, yeah, it's like I think he could go. I just think I don't know. That's what I'm crossing my fingers for. But who knows?
Obi's going top 6. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
From the guys I
Yeah.
spoke to, Atlanta would take him if he's there at 6.
Okay, interesting.
But
That's
I
so
also-
funny. We were just talking about how he's basically just who they already have.
I But it also like sometimes we really do get caught up in fit and needs and all that stuff. Like these guys, they look at
True.
these players and they just go down the list. Like who is the best player that I could just add to the roster? We'll figure everything else out later.
Right.
And so Obi, everyone likes Obi. There are guys who have Obi number 2 overall.
Wow.
He's top 4 on a lot of boards. And so I think at some point they're going to ignore fit and just say, okay, Obi's a guy who can average 20 and 10 on 60% shooting while stretching the floor with the 3. And so I think he's going to go before the Knicks, no doubt. And I know you said teams aren't looking for point guards, but like everyone loves Halliburton. I'm telling you, he's going to go before the Knicks.
Bummer.
And they're not going to really teams.
He's
Chicago-
definitely going before the Knicks, you think?
Pretty sure. I mean, Chicago would take him at 4, I think. And again, Kobe White, sure, but Halliburton is so versatile and so you can fit him in so easily. And
Right.
he's like he can't like a bad game from Halliburton can't hurt you. You know, there's some guys who
Right,
like
right,
a bad
right.
game from Anthony Edwards, he can like shoot you out of the game. Halliburton can't hurt you. He can only help. And I think teams are going to look at that and say, okay, in this draft, I want a guy like that. And then Atlanta, I think, who I have in my latest mock draft, I have Atlanta taking Halliburton to putting next to Trey as like a secondary playmaker and spot up shooter. I think Detroit would definitely take him if he's there at 7. So I think those 2 guys end up going before the Knicks are on the clock.
So Halliburton or not Halliburton, sorry, Killian Hayes or Okoro are possibly our best options at 8 for the Knicks.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, and I'd say the most likely options at this point, unless they trade down. And like, Boston has 14, 26, and 30. I wouldn't be shocked if Boston tries to offer 14 and 26 and maybe 30 to move up into the top 10. Take a guy like Okongwu, who could be there at number 8 or number 7.
Oh wow, interesting. That would make a lot of sense for them. But yeah, great point, John. You know what my number 1 draft pick would be this year, Sam?
What's that?
Cushy Dreams, high quality CBD. That's right, folks.
I've been smoking a lot lately.
We've been doing our research, puffing on that fucking beautiful. I've been doing Create, getting in the right headspace to watch tape, to look at Anthony Edwards tape, to look at Killian Hayes, who I'm really hoping the Knicks get, or Tyrese Halliburton. I've been smoking some of the finest American-made CBD, grown here, lab tested, hugely approved. The kind of stuff that's handpicked, tested for quality. And you know what? It smells like high quality marijuana, it tastes like it, smokes like it, all that stuff. But you don't get high. You just get a nice little buzz that gets you ready to podcast and to watch the NBA draft next Wednesday.
That buzz is, dude, peace or relax or create. Those are my favorite flavors. They all.
I love it. And they have a lot. Whatever you're interested in, they got different kinds of strains that come in either, like we said, there's stuff for nighttime. There's indica. There's sativa blends. You're gonna love it no matter what you're doing. And it comes in a pre-roll or it comes in a nice little tin, a little 3.5 gram eighth tin. So you can smoke it in any way that you like. Boof it, smoke it through your asshole. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. We prefer to use our mouths, but
yeah,
who knows? If the Knicks, listen, if LaMelo falls to the Knicks, maybe I'll shotgun some high quality cushy dreams directly into Sam's ass. Who knows?
I accept that because I know it's not going to happen, so there's no point in even disputing this. But.
All right, we'll see. I can't wait.
I'll take it.
So, folks, go to cushydreams.com, KUSHY dreams.com, promo code PODDON'T, PODDONT, and you will get 20% off your first order. So go order right now. And if we get LaMelo, then have your CBD ready because we'll be live streaming me blowing it into Sam's ass, and you should be. I guess we're gonna have to use OnlyFans. We can't do it on YouTube.
I've been a Knicks fan longer than you, so I
whole
know
life. Yes,
nothing good will happen.
Exactly.
Nothing good ever happens.
Well, here's where you're fucking up though, Sam. You're assuming that's gonna be good because, like I said. It's Schrodinger's all-star. If we get LaMelo, he's going to be a bust. If we don't get him, he's going to be good. Anyway, folks, that's cushydreams.com. Promo code PODDON'T. Order some of that fucking shit and smoke up a nice little splifferoonie. And let's get back into talking to the draft. Okay, the Knicks, you said the Boston has 26. The Knicks have 27. Let's go. Let's double down on Knicks. What are we thinking at the end of the first? Anybody interesting? Obviously that's a lot of projection at that point, but who are the guys kind of in that range that you think might be solid? I mean, obviously at the end of the first round, it's like these guys are probably not going to, be anything, but who do you think might make sense for us there?
So I'll say we talk a lot of shit about this draft, but I think this draft, what separates it from others is the guys in the late 20s. I think you could probably say like there's not much of a difference between number 18 and number 40 in this draft. And so I think it's pretty, nice. If you have the 27th, like I think the Knicks are going to get better value at 27 than they might at number 8. So you go down the list of guys who are, in that range. For me, Tyler Bay from Colorado is a big time athlete and defensive specialist. Desmond Bane from TCU, 40% from downtown.
Oh yeah, yeah. See, that's a guy that I wanted to ask you to, where it's like that's kind of the second part of that question about why big men are so valued. I was looking and it's like there's these like dead-eyed shooters that to me it's like in today's league these kind of guys shouldn't go after 20. I don't think, but so like a guy like Bane, there's that guy Jaden McDaniels who was like really hyped and like his season at Washington was bad, but he still. It seems like there might be some, he might be the kind of guy to take a flyer on. He's a good shooter.
How about
who's that? Nesmith.
Cole Anthony is out of the lottery in all the drafts I see, and
he's way out of the lottery, isn't he? Like in this range, basically. Aren't we talking about him at like 20s now?
He's not going. Late.
Yeah, I don't think he's like. I talked to an executive last week who had him 35.
Jeez,
that's by far the lowest I've heard. But
right.
teams have cooled on him, and I just also like. He talks a lot of shit. He's really cocky. Like he's not going to win people over with his personality. And then the fact he shot 37% from the floor and averaged 4 assists to 3.5 turnovers. Like he's not a guy you trust running your offense, at least early in his career. Listen, I like Cole Anthony. I think he's going to be one of the value picks of this draft, particularly if he goes to like a good team where his job is to come off the bench and score.
Yeah.
But
the Bucks could use him. The Bucks could use more ball handlers for sure.
I've heard some Austin Rivers comparisons with him. He's also, I remember his dad, one of the worst moments of my life, getting that fucking Reggie Miller push. Ready to get back to that, Fuck that. His dad was a tough player for the Knicks. He was a tough-minded point guard off the bench, but offensively, he never really materialized into what we hoped. But, right. Steph Curry's better than Dell. So,
right. So listen, the Knicks have clearly done like their research on Cole. And I'd probably say, in fact, I did podcasts early in the season. And I said, if I had to bet, the Knicks end up taking Cole Anthony with their first pick. But obviously now his stock has fallen, and I'm sure there's still a level of interest in him because I think he's a good buy low pick in this draft. I thought in my head, why not offering 38 and 27 to move up if he's there like in the early 20s to get a guy like Cole who
Yeah.
he could score. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be like I said before, a guy you want making all your decisions, but I think to be able to bring a guy like that off the bench, and I mean, he's a big time shot creator and shot maker, and I'm not so worried about his passing and playmaking if his role is to come off the bench and put the ball in the bucket.
So Lou Williams basically is what we're looking at.
Yeah, that's not
Sort
bad.
of.
That
If we're
type of
lucky.
player.
Is he efficient though? I mean, that's the thing. Lou's so efficient where it's like, but I guess it's also, I feel bad for him too, because he's on what it looks like is one of the shittiest UNC teams of all time. Like, it's like you see this guy who had like, and we were all over Cole Anthony before. We were like, hell yeah, Knicks. He's like, at the time he was like top 5 minimum. I mean, people were talking about him as the first pick in that draft, and he's going to the fucking Tar Heels. They're going to win a national championship. And then you watch the season and it's a brutal. Brutal. It seemed like Roy Williams was completely checked out. He did not. He wanted to, if he was playing a video game, he would have simmed that season. We'll put it that way. He was like, let's get the next draft class in here.
But he is another guy like you talked about, Jonathan, where he's got a good mixtape. Like he's one of those dudes. I follow Chris Brickley on Instagram, that Black Ops trainer, and I love that he talks shit for his clients. Where he's like, this guy's a lottery pick, no question. I love that this trainer. He was one of Melo's biggest advocates. Like this guy belongs in the NBA. Like I love that he believes in his clients. He seems like a decent guy.
Oh yeah. Every one of Brickley's students is like the next so-and-so, and everyone right. He's still talking about J.R. Smith being like, somebody's got he's got his group of guys, and but yeah, I've seen Cole, like, I know where Brickley does those workouts in the city, like in Midtown. I happened to be playing a pickup game there, and it finished at like 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and Cole comes in at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night. Like, he definitely loves the game. He's totally invested in getting better, but he's so cocky, and it can be a really big turnoff.
Do you think that's humbling? I mean, do you think that's kind of in some ways the best thing that could happen to a guy like that? Instead of, it's like if he sees himself going to the 20s, then it is maybe the kind of thing where it's like, I mean, that chip on your shoulder has been a big thing for some of these guys that, have really big careers. And it might, I mean, he is, let's be honest, his dad played for the Knicks. He's a rich kid. I mean, he grew up in like, he doesn't have that, he has to sort of manufacture. Right? He has to manufacture a chip.
It helps when you have the access to those types of trainers, and it helps when you have, but it hurts with your mentality sometimes where, I mean, Jimmy Butler, you can tell by the way he plays.
Right.
An easy childhood. You know what I mean? There's certain guys. I heard Chris Rock had this hilarious line once. I just overheard him say it at the Cellar where he goes, Steph Curry is Allen Iverson with two parents. I was like, damn. That's fucking.
That's fucking hilarious. Yeah. So I don't know. That's my point. Maybe this is good for him, especially if he falls like late and he does go to a contender and who needs somebody to run their set, or who has like real minutes on their second unit. I think that is a potential good, a good thing that could happen to him.
Could he be like Alonzo Trier, or could he be like Lou Williams? Like, we don't know, right? Is he? I know he's more of a combo guard. Maybe that's what Cole Anthony's going to be, a combo guard off the bench. Who knows? Or maybe he'll be a starting player. You never know.
Early in the season, I kind of in my mind pictured like Jamal Murray, and that was the type of guy who I guess he plays point guard. I know Jokic is like really the point guard of that team, but he's the ball handler. He's a scoring ball handler is like kind of the label I gave him, because he's not a great decision maker. You don't want him, making all those decisions and running the offense, but he handles the ball and he scores. And naturally, when you handle the ball enough, you're going to get some assists. And so that's kind of how I pictured it.
Like a 5-assist guy.
Yeah, a 5-assist guy. Like Colin Sexton is another guy who comes to mind.
Jamal Murray jumped up a shitload. His stock right now, I mean.
Yeah, so after that happened, I suddenly stopped using that comparison.
that spinning layup that he hit in the first round on Utah was like, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't know he had that in the bag.
And then he did it again. He did it again on LeBron. That was fucking wild.
That move better be in the new 2K game, dude. That was
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
No,
got like,
that's
the best. He's got the best layup game. I've never even talked about like layup games before, but he's got the
right.
best layup game.
Gary Payton
my
back in
God.
the day had that layup game. Remember that shit?
Absolutely. It's interesting though, because that seems to be a new position. Like it just feels like, I don't know, man. I mean, we talk about positionless ball, but it seems like point guard and shooting guard ideally have melded at this point, where it's like your Hardens, your Lucas, LeBron on some level, and Jamal Murray is just kind of, if you think of him as like a non-traditional, like, whatever point guard is one thing, but if you think of him as almost like a kind of shittier Harden, you know what I mean? It's like
Right.
just that position, but just not as good. It's weird, man. I feel like we've like one is going to be like those guys. Ideally, is like the really good teams. And I don't know. Have you? I guess I'm curious as to like how that factors into, the way you evaluate these guys, because yeah, these positions, especially we were talking about, old school guys versus new school guys, that's got to factor in, right? Like the way it seems like really it's like your ideal way to put a team together now is you have a guy like, and I know this is lofty, but what I'm saying, like Harden, Luka, even Jamal Murray, if you want to say, then a five who is block shots and has some value on offense, and then three wings. It seems like that's the way you figure it out. So I don't know, has that changed the way you evaluate these guys? Does power forward even exist when you're looking at drafts anymore?
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of like three positions. It's bigs, it's wings, and it's ball handlers.
Right.
And I always say, like, when I'm doing these big boards, I'm putting together rankings. Like I should realistically put together 30 sets of them, one for each team.
Right.
And yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like with the big guy who passes I think you just need a good mix of five guys, and you get enough passing, like from enough of those five guys as a group. You don't necessarily anymore need Steve Nash to run the team and average 10 assists. You just need a good balance of passing from everybody. And like I was saying before, like Denver doesn't really have a point guard. Like Jokic needs them in assists, and Jamal Murray gives them enough assists. And
two options at ball handler. And you know what else I think about is you bring up Nash and guys like Chris Paul, who are maybe the two best passers of this generation, throwing Jason Kidd, whoever, right? But those teams Nash and Paul didn't win rings. I think in the playoffs, the offense becomes a little more predictable when it's one guy every time, as opposed to a Spurs-like team. Tony Parker's never been like a top 5 passer.
Right, exactly.
But they can all pass in that team. And that way you have a lot of ways to kill another team. You think about those old Knicks teams like the 72, 73. Everyone could pass. Like you look at those Spurs, Stav's laughing at me right now.
We went from Nash to 1972.
No, but these teams, you make up for
I'm with you.
talent,
I know
is
what
my
you're talking
point.
about.
You
Yeah,
make
yeah,
up
yeah.
for talent. I mean,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna say Wilt Chamberlain ain't the best player on that court. The Knicks
Right.
had great passing. Same
Right.
with like the Spurs. You can argue that team didn't always have the most talent, but everyone on that team could pass the ball.
Yeah. And it's interesting that what you're saying is like it does matter from team to team, because yeah, I guess the way, 1 through 5, the like point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, all that stuff, it's like, yeah, I guess really it was the kind of thing where, okay, it used to be your 5 did all your shot blocking, and your 1 did all your passing, and your 2 did all your 2 or your 5 did all your scoring. And then it's like, whereas I think that's an interesting way to look at it, where it's like, yeah, it's almost like you have to spread this out. Now the game is being played where it's spread out evenly, or in some cases where you have like a Harden or a Luka, where it's like, oh, this guy does all your ball handling and your shooting. And, it's like, but it does matter, where it's like, it almost is like, you have to figure out how to get to whatever, some number, 100 or whatever. And it's like, you can spread that out evenly. So yeah, I guess teams are just more, I guess it's not that, I guess that's what happens when it's positionless. It's that it literally is. It just, from team to team, it depends on which guy gives you what. And I think people are more open to playing differently now, which is kind of cool. And I guess does make evaluation kind of, you're right. I guess it makes your job almost harder to be like, well, this guy could do this for, the Wizards, but he could do this for, whoever, the Cavs or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think one of the skills that's being valued more today and for all positions, is being able to create for teammates and put the ball on the floor and make a play. Like it used to be, even like 5 years ago, it was like, okay, now we want bigs to shoot. Well, now we don't want bigs to just shoot. They need to be able to attack a closeout and pass on the move.
Right.
And so everybody needs to be able to do that. Of course, now shooting will never go out of style, but I think now you need them more to just catch and shoot. They need to be able to dribble or take a defensive rebound and push it, before the defense can set. And so I think that's big, like what we're seeing from Bam and Jokic, guys who can handle a little bit and pass on the move.
Don't you think a guy like Boris Diaw would have a higher stock in today's game? A guy who could just do a little bit of everything.
He was ahead of his time.
A lot of these guys
love Diaw.
Well, you could put him at the 4 now. You could put him at the 5 now. Not a great rim protector, obviously, but second unit definitely. I mean, a guy who can just step out and hit the 3. A guy who played for the Spurs, But I mean, all around game. You're right. It makes a huge difference now because Stav and I were talking about the Bucks and how we're like, man, Middleton's a great defender. He's a great shooter. He can't play make, and Giannis really needs a playmaker.
Yeah, he can't put the ball on the floor at all.
And then another thing, now we're still like, it just came to my mind of just thinking like when I first started doing this, and how much it's changed. When we're talking about bigs, like how tall they are and the measurements. Like I remember when I first started doing this, and I would look at the measurements. I mean, like this guy's 6'10". I wish he was 6'11". Then I'd feel better about him playing center. Well, now who gives a shit whether he's 6'11" or 6'8"? And so I think it really doesn't really matter anymore for big guys, like how tall you are, how big you are. I think it's more about your skill set.
Yeah.
I mean, Draymond's going to play the 5 this year, I'm sure, as he has in the past. And, and
what would you say Zion's position ultimately should be? You think,
really?
That's Sammy?
Not even a question.
Boom.
Really? So he's not a power forward in your mind?
I mean, you can, and listen.
You can, Stav. See that?
You can.
Can you tell we argued about this last episode, John?
Stav and I we're like a married couple that just like picks at our guest. Stav, what did you say last week? That was weird. There was a third party here to dispute that.
Yeah, just involving a stranger on the train in our argument.
My biological father and his wife would do that shit when I'm at dinner. She would be like, Bob tricked me into moving into him. Sneaky. And I'm just like, oh boy, let me just.
You're like, I'm just trying to get through this burger, miss. Okay. But I don't. Either way, I think we can all agree and move forward. He's a 5, and we don't have to talk about it anymore. So we don't want to keep too much of your time. I'm sure you're real busy right now. You're gearing up for this draft. Any last guys that you want to talk about? Any weird prospects? And then I also want to ask about like future prospects. But there's one guy I meant to ask that I've seen a lot that looks weird, who played actually for my favorite Greek team, Olympiakos, even though he played on the second team. Is what is it? Pokashevsky?
Yeah, Pokashevsky.
My Knicks bias is rivaled by Stav's Greek bias.
No, my Olympiakos bias. Although he was playing on, I looked at the highlights. I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna see some Olympiakos highlights. It looks like they put him on the second team or like the training team. It's crazy. I mean, this guy, he was playing in like these little gyms, but yeah, he's some guy who's like 7 feet tall, but handles the ball and is like skinny as shit.
It was Greece's second league, but Giannis played in that same league too. Before he was there. I mean, the level of competition is kind of like, it's kind of a joke and
totally.
It looks kind of silly, but
it looks like a pickup game. It looks like the game you were playing in before looking at Cole Anthony.
I think I had more fans at my middle school games. But yeah, he's 7 feet, and like another guy whose highlights are nuts. He's 7 feet. He averaged a 3.5 per game. He averaged over 3 assists. He averaged 2 blocks. I mean, nobody really checks those boxes like at that level in terms of shooting, passing, and shot blocking. But then you look at his lowlights, and he clearly is an 18-year-old kid. He's the youngest kid in the draft. He hasn't turned 19 until Christmas.
Oh, wow.
But, he's rail thin, and he hates contact.
Time, kind of like the Knicks got to give Kevin Knox time. So. Do you think Kevin Knox is already a bust, Jonathan?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. It's not going to be with the Knicks, if anything. If he carves out a career as a role player, it's like one of those second – is he just too slow, and he's just kind of like doesn't really fit it? Because he's a guy who we got the one Kentucky player that didn't turn into anything. I'd even have Malik Monk at this point.
I just don't think he really gets it, honestly. And I'm not really sure like what he's good at. I mean, what is he good at?
it's tough because in summer league that first year he looked like Jason Tatum. Like
He
he had the
totally
jumper.
fooled me. Yeah, he sold me.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't. I was high on him after that summer league, and then I actually watched him play against real people.
Yeah, yeah.
And he
Bummer.
just the lack of. I will say he didn't get much of it for his minutes to go down last year, and his usage to go down. Like, how is he going to get better if he's not
Right.
playing or his role keeps fluctuating?
Maybe we
But-
didn't need to sign 4 power forwards ahead of him. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't given right. It wasn't a good opportunity for him to develop. But sometimes I just watch him, and he just doesn't look like totally engaged, and it doesn't totally get it. And I think you're just banking on his shooting to get. That's his only shot to really hold like any real value as a starting caliber player, is if he becomes a consistent jump shooter. But coming out of college, he was not a creator. He was not a passer. He was not a defender. We just like the idea of him. He was 6'9".
Right.
He was 6'9". He could shoot, he could slash, but he's just not really good at any of them right now. And he hasn't really improved at any of those weaknesses since he's been in the NBA.
And how do you feel about RJ and Mitch? I'm sorry, these are my last Knicks questions.
Let's.
so-
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask. No. I actually wanted to ask where you think RJ would go in this draft.
After what we know, like based on what we know now,
What we know now. Yeah, sure.
I would say RJ would be like a late lottery pick.
In this draft,
Yeah, I think the
that's
league is
tough,
pretty.
Sam.
So do you have not a lot of hope for RJ?
I mean, it depends what we're talking about here. I think he's a good. I think he's a starting player, but I don't.
Yes.
That's
There we
something.
go.
Sure. I don't think he's. I don't see any All-Star games anytime soon.
Really? Ever?
I mean, listen, I like
Fuck,
it.
man.
He's 20. I mean, I would say.
Sam was like waiting for the diagnosis. Sam had the face of like waiting for the biopsy results with that one. He's like, "What do you think? Benign or?"
Well, Sam, who do you like more? Who do you like if you had to keep one player and trade one player, Mitch or RJ?
Tough. It's really tough because
That's
Mitch is
brutal.
so raw. RJ is still young and like I don't think he was used properly this year. I think he had flashes where I was like, "Fuck, this dude could kind of do everything pretty well if he gets an opportunity." And I don't. I heard reports. My famous segment, "Word in the Street."
We're on the street.
Where I make up gossip. But no, I did hear reports that he didn't like playing with Julius Randle, and you can kind of see it when he plays.
Which doesn't.
so-
Yeah, I mean, Randall's a fucking problem. He's,
Who would want to play with Julius Randle?
yeah.
I mean, it's tough. So I think I like him a lot both. I think RJ has a higher ceiling if he can reach his full potential because he can do a lot. He's kind of got an awkward dribble handle. He can attack the rim. He's pretty fearless attacking the rim for a young player. His jump shot's not there yet. I think it could. He's got good passing instincts. I think he is pretty good at everything. So I have hope that he can get really good at everything with RJ. So I guess I take slightly RJ, but I love Mitch's potential as well as this
It's
like
tough because Mitch, it's not even potential with Mitch. He's already doing it. He fouls too much, so he can't stay on the floor, but he never got. It's crazy that, like what we were just talking about with Knox, it's kind of wild to me that Mitch didn't get to start more. I mean, what the fuck were they doing last season? It didn't make any sense. They should have tried. That was a season to see, can this guy really be a starting five? Because if he is, then he really is like a legit building block that you would feel comfortable saying, yeah, I'd take him over RJ without even thinking about it. But as of now, it's kind of hard because they've kept him in that reserve role and he fouls so much that it's like, but I don't know. I think he's the player he exists already. It's just, he should just not if he could stay on the court, I think.
Yeah, no, Mitch is just like total talent, and I don't think he has any idea what he's doing out there. But even still,
right.
even still, he does some wild things. Yeah,
Yes.
I remember when Bill Simmons was really high on Anthony Randolph. Remember that guy?
Oh yeah.
sure.
And the Knicks got him, and Simmons was like, "Fuck, I hate to give the Knicks props, but they just got a difference maker." And I was like, "What?" And so, but Randolph couldn't stay in the league either. He was another really high ceiling guy that kind of just couldn't figure it out. So I hope
It's the same thing I was saying before. We like the idea of these big guys who
Right.
can, face up and do a couple of things. It doesn't mean they're good at him, but like the idea is that hopefully they become good at it.
But he can give you a 5-block game in his sleep. I mean, he is that kind of raw talent. So I hope he figures it out. I still am high on Mitch and RJ, but other than that, I think it's like we could kind of let anything else go. I don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, I think those guys will be. I think they have a path to being on this team being good one day, right? Like there's a definitely those guys are on the Knicks when we're in the playoffs in like 5 years. But I just don't think RJ is going to be the star. You know what I mean? And I think Mitch is the kind of guy that, like, you know, I don't think he plays. You know, maybe he gets his shit under control, but you know, maybe he plays like 25 minutes, 30 minutes. That's the other thing with the way the NBA is. That kind of guy doesn't play that much, even as good as he is. I mean, I guess if he's just like a really, really good rim runner, whatever, rim runner, shot blocker, then yeah, he could play a little more. But yeah, those guys can. I just don't think they are, you know, foundational pieces in any sense. But, you know, we'll see. I don't know. I feel a little better about the Knicks. I'm hoping Leon Rose knows what the fuck he's doing, but who's to say? It seems a little better. I'm sure this will, you know, we'll go into this draft and they'll trade next year's first round pick to move up to get LaMelo, and then he'll be a bust since we drafted him, and then it'll all be bullshit. But as of right now, I'm feeling good. I think we're gonna get a nice point guard at 8. That's what I'm thinking. You know, Hayes or, you know, something.
Something.
Or a good, yeah.
Let's change the. I am concerned with the culture. That really is like, because even if you do get a really good young guy and the culture is shit, they don't develop. So I think the Garden's.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of why if we don't have to give up a lot, I want Chris Paul for the next 2 years. I don't mind fucking.
I'm with you, bro. I'm 100%.
Because look what he did to the OKC culture, you know. And I know Billy Donovan played a role with that, and they did get special young players with, you know, Gilgeous-Alexander. But I think culture is something, and I think Tyson Chandler helped our culture when he came here. And I know we had more talent then, but that gets you talent, and that gets you to become a better culture. And who the fuck wants to? You playing at MSG, and then you have to fucking practice
hell
in
yeah.
Westchester. Get us
That's
a fucking
brutal.
practice facility.
I know.
In
That's
the
crazy.
tri-state area.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is fucking insane.
I know Westchester's technically the tri-state area, but it's not.
It sucks. The
Get us
traffic
in
and
a borough. Get us a fucking borough.
It's been like
Totally.
that for a while. Like it's been a complaint, and it's been out there for a long time. And
yeah.
it's changed.
It was probably disqualifying for getting KD, literally. I know that's crazy to think, but I mean, they've even talked. I think DeAndre Jordan was talking about that, how much he hated it. But anyway,
I don't blame him, man. Although fuck, it is worth it to play in the Garden over the fucking Barclays Center, but still, it's like,
yeah,
I get what that would annoy me. I'm like, fuck, I gotta come meet you. I have people like do a gig for me. I'm like, where they're like white plains, and I'm like, thanks anyway. You know, so you think I'm doing that shit? No.
Hell yeah, man. Well, John, we really appreciate you coming on, man. It was really, really great, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens here with the with the Knicks, and maybe in our short off season or something, we'll have you back on to do some even farther out previews of the next draft. So who knows? We'll
And
see.
also follow Jonathan at NBA Draft Was, Draft WASS on Twitter. He's always posting good stuff about these young players and stuff. It's really, really a good follow.
Yeah. Anything else you want to plug, man?
No, I think I got something coming out like every day up until draft night, which I just can't wait to get here and come and go already. But no, nothing specific.
Awesome. Yeah, so go follow Jonathan, read his stuff, and man, thanks again. And thank you guys.
This was fun.
Take it easy, bud.
All right.
All right. Bye, guys. That's going to do it for us today. See ya.